I have no doubt that if you're Australian as I am, or even if you're not, that you've heard of the chivalrous exploits of Ned Kelly and his gang. These actions have long been immortalised in Australian folklore. But were Ned Kelly and his ragtag group of bushrangers really the Robin Hoods of Australia? Or just some thieves who used that idea as a way to better their reputation among the common folk? Well, in this video, and its subsequent part 2, I hope to answer that very question as we dive into the incredible life of Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly's father, John, was born in 1820 at Clonbrogan near Moylegas in Count Tipperary, Ireland. At the age of 21, he was found guilty of stealing 2 pigs and was transported to Australia on the prison ship the Prince Regent. He arrived at Hobart on the 2nd of January 1842, and after finishing his sentence in January 1848, he moved to the colony of Victoria and found work at James Quinn's farm at Wallen Wallen as a bush carpenter. On the 18th of November 1850, John Kelly, sometimes known as Red, married Ned's mother, Ellen Quinn, who was just 18 at the time. After their marriage, the couple turned their attention to gold digging, which was very popular during that time in Australia, and managed to earn enough money to buy a small freehold in Beveridge just north of modern-day Melbourne. Ned Kelly was his parents' 3rd child, and while his exact birth date is unknown, it was probably sometime in December 1854. Ned was possibly baptised by an Augustinian priest, Charles O'Hee, who actually ended up being the one to administer Ned's last rites before his later execution. Unfortunately for Ned Kelly and his family, they did not prosper at Beveridge, and his father began drinking heavily. Following these hardships, in 1864, the family moved to Avenel, near Seymour, where, due to their sketchy activities to say the least, they soon attracted the attention of the local police. As a boy, Kelly obtained basic schooling and became familiar with the surrounding bush. In Avenel, at the age of 11, he risked his life to save another boy from drowning in Hughes Creek. As a token of appreciation, the boy's family gave him a green sash, which he still wore all those years later under his armour during his famous final showdown with the police in 1880, which we'll cover in part 2. This sash can now be found at the Benalla Museum, still stained with his blood. In 1865, Ned Kelly's father was convicted in relation to the theft of a calf and sentenced to a fine of £25 or 6 months hard labour. Although the family couldn't afford to pay the fine, there is no record of Red being transferred to Kilmore Jail. In December 1866, Red was fined for being drunk and disorderly, which was unfortunately not much of a wake-up call for him as he continued his alcoholism before dying at Avenel on the 27th of December 1866. After their father's death, the following year, the Kellys moved to Greta in northeastern Victoria near the Quinn family and their relatives by marriage, the Lloyds. In 1868, the family leased a small farm of 88 acres or 360,000 square miles at 11 Mile Creek near Greta. Unfortunately, this land was likely unsuitable for successful farming, and Ned's mother, Ellen, supplemented her income by offering accommodation to travellers and illegally selling alcohol. In 1869, at the age of just 14, Ned Kelly met the Irish-born Harry Power, which was actually an alias for the man's real name of Henry Johnson. Harry Power, or Henry Johnson, was a transported convict who turned to bushranging in northeastern Victoria after escaping Melbourne's Pentridge prison. After this meeting, the Kellys formed part of Power's network of sympathisers, and by May 1869, Ned had become Power's bushranging protege. At the end of May, the prodigy and his mentor attempted to steal horses from the Mansfield property of squatter John Rowe, as a part of a larger plan to rob the Woods Point Mansfield Gold Escort. They would have to abandon this idea, however, fleeing back into the bush after Rowe shot at them. After this little hiccup, Kelly temporarily broke off his association with Power. Up until this point, Ned, despite his and his family's criminal doings, had managed to stay out of the police's way. That would change in mid-October 1869, however, when an altercation took place between him and a Chinese pig and fowl dealer from Morses Creek named Ah Fook. And yes, I double checked that it was his actual name, Ah Fook. I know what it sounds like. According to Fook, as he passed the Kelly family home, Ned brandished a long stick and declared himself a bushranger before robbing him of 10 shillings. Despite this claim, Kelly gave evidence in court that Fook had abused his sister Annie in a dispute over Fook's request for a drink of water before beating Ned with a stick after he came to his sister's defense. Luckily for Ned, all charges against him would be dropped after Annie and 2 other family-related witnesses corroborated his side of the story. After a relatively quiet few months, Ned reconciled with his old friend Power in March 1870, and over the next month the pair committed a series of armed robberies as police scrambled to find them and identify Power's young accomplice. By the end of April, however, the press had named Kelly as the culprit, and a few days later he was captured by police and confined to Beechworth Jail. His trial ended up being quite a controversial one, with the first 2 charges being dismissed, as none of the victims could positively identify him. On the 3rd charge, the victims also reportedly failed to identify Kelly, possibly due to the fact that the witnesses had described Power's accomplice as a quote-unquote half-caste, or a person of mixed Aboriginal and European descent. The police, however, believed this was the result of Kelly going unwashed, and asked for him to be remanded for trial. Kelly was then sent to Melbourne, where he spent the weekend in a lock-up before being transferred to Kyneton to face court. No evidence was produced in court, however, and Kelly was released after a month. Soon after Kelly was released, his good friend Power was captured by a police search party while resting at a mountainside gunya or bark shelter that overlooked the property of Kelly's maternal grandfather, James Quinn. Following his arrest, word spread within the community that Kelly had informed on him, a rumour which Kelly adamantly denied. In a letter which bears the only surviving example of his handwriting, Kelly pleaded with Sergeant James Babington of Kyneton for help, saying that everyone looks on me like a black snake. The true informant actually turned out to be Kelly's uncle, Jack Lloyd, who received £500 for his assistance. In saying that, however, Kelly had also given information which led to Power's capture, and it is possible the charges against him were dropped in exchange for this information. Power also always believed that Kelly was responsible for the betrayal. You would think that this incredibly close call with the law would implore the young Ned Kelly to steer clear of criminal activity, but you would be wrong. In October 1870, Kelly was sentenced to 6 months of hard labour for assaulting a hawker named Jeremiah McCormack after an altercation between the man and one of Kelly's friends. Kelly was released from Beechworth Jail on the 27th of March 1871, 5 weeks early, and returned to Greta. 3 weeks later, horsebreaker Isaiah Wilde Wright arrived in town to see his friend Alex Gunn, a Scottish miner who had married Kelly's older sister. Wright was riding a chestnut horse which he had borrowed without telling the owner. Kelly later claimed that he was unaware that the horse didn't belong to Wright. According to Kelly's side of the story that ensued, the mare went missing that night, and Gunn lent Wright one of his own horses, promising that, if he found the horse, that he would keep it until Wright returned. Kelly said that as soon as Wright departed, the mare was found by Gunn and a neighbour. Kelly then took the mare to Wangaratta, where he stayed for 4 days. On the 20th of April, 1871, while riding back into Greta, Kelly was intercepted by Constable Edward Hall, who suspected the horse was stolen. Kelly was taken into custody with the help of 7 bystanders following a short but brutal altercation, in which Hall attempted to shoot Kelly and pistol-whipped him until his head became a mass of raw and bleeding flesh. Kelly and Gunn were both charged with horse stealing, but when it was later revealed that Kelly was still in Beechworth Jail when the horse was taken, the charges were downgraded to feloniously receiving a horse. Kelly and Gunn were sentenced to 3 years imprisonment with hard labour, And Wright, despite being the man who had actually stolen the horse, only received 18 months for illegal use of a horse. Kelly was released on the 2nd of February, 6 months early, for good behaviour. When he returned to Greta, his brother Jim was in prison for horse theft, and his mother soon married an American, George King. Following his release, to settle the score with Wright over the borrowed without consent horse, Kelly fought him in a bare-knuckle boxing match at the Imperial Hotel in Beechworth on the 8th of August 1874. Kelly won after 20 rounds and was declared the unofficial boxing champion of the district. In spite of his defeat, Wright actually greatly respected Kelly after this and became an ardent supporter of him. Well, I think that's going to be where I end this part 1. Part 2 should be out sometime later on in the week/weekend. If you enjoyed this video, as always, don't forget to like the video, as it shows YouTube people are enjoying my content. Also, if you'd like to see more videos from me, make sure to subscribe. But with all that self-promo out of the way, I hope all you guys have a great day, night, wherever you are, and I hope to see you in the next one.